This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. There was a time on the internet where everyone was talking about Thalassophobia, the fear of deep water. I, for one, was terrified of the images and videos linked to this term because, yeah. However, these are by no means an accurate representation of thalassophobia, as the severity of the phobia can greatly vary, with some people being triggered by the mere thought of the ocean. These, like the infamous trypophobia test, which, by the way, isn't even recognized as an official diagnosis in DSM-5-TR, cater to the basic human evolutionary response rather than an irrational fear. For instance, what do you think is repeating in these photos? For one, there is the element of the unknown. The ocean is a mysterious place. We as humans have apparently mapped out less than 10% of the global ocean, and the images are highlighting that lack of clarity, the remoteness of the ocean. It's also very dark, and darkness is a prepared fear, so there's that. But more importantly, there is usually something else in the photo, something very big. Now, there is a scientific term for intense fear of large objects, megalophobia. But being afraid of giant things, especially when they are alive, is more or less in line with our evolutionary history, as it increases our survival rate. I'll stop here because I'm not an expert on this subject. If you want more information, it may be better you go do your own research beyond this point. What I'm trying to say is that being scared of these photos is a rather normal response if you are a human. It doesn't mean everyone will freak out, but simply that it's okay if you did, and that it doesn't necessarily mean you have thalassophobia. But the ocean is everywhere. We see it all the time because we live on Earth. So what happens if you fly away? I remember people having similar discussions online years back with images of planets. How the vastness of outer space and the size of Neptune, for instance, scares the living shit out of them. Referring back to what we just discussed, this should be a no-brainer. Not only is space bigger and more mysterious than the ocean, but it's also inherently more intimidating because we've never been to space. It's too foreign. But that is exactly why some people will have no emotional response to these photos, because it is too unreal and too distant from reality. And I get that because I was one of those people. Until I tried Google Earth VR, standing in front of the sun floating like a helpless dust. That made me panic, and since then, nothing's been the same. My natural response to this newfound terror as a film lover, of course, was to revisit all science fiction films I've watched over the years to see which one best captures the horror of outer space. The fun part of this activity was that the film itself didn't have to be categorized in the horror genre or be scientifically accurate in its depictions, although it would be nice if it was. All it really needed to do was effectively capture the essence of the unknown that would trigger a primitive fear reaction. The best way to do this in cinema is to link this near transcendental concept with an equally complex film language and keep the more apparent story somewhat independent. That probably made no sense, so let me give you an oversimplified example.
What do you mean?
Let's say you're watching a film about ghosts. Which would be more effective in building tension, conveying their presence exclusively through audio and camera work, or outright showing them on screen from the start?
Hello? Hello?
If you chose the first option, that's what I meant. If you chose the second, oh, you're gonna hate this video. Anyways, to follow this personal criteria, I had to disqualify some great candidates like Gravity, Event Horizon, or even High Life, which portrayed with excellence the suffocating isolation of being in a spaceship away from everyone and everything. Because these films relied mostly on the nature of the story itself, conveying a sense of dread or urgency only through events that unfold as a result of a narrative conflict. This sounds generalized, and I can elaborate, but for now, just know that they weren't enough. I wanted an unprecedented, visceral cinematic experience. Enter Stanley Kubrick. What 2001: A Space Odyssey does better than any other films on the list is visual storytelling. transcending traditional narrative techniques to evoke a sense of wonder and awe, underlining the omnipotence of the universe and in turn highlighting our insignificance as human beings. One of the most obvious visual techniques is the camera work, which stays static for the most part actually, but it's not a regular fixed shot because the average shot length, or ASL for short, of this film is 13.5 seconds, almost 4 seconds longer than other English language films in the 1960s and 3 times longer than films today. This type of prolonged static shots produce a sense of objectivity, where the audience takes on the role of a bystander rather than an active participant. Now, you may think that objectivity then is an enemy of immersion, but that is not necessarily the case, as when done right, static shots can simultaneously intensify the scene by allowing the audience to dwell on a specific emotional energy of the presented image. If anything, that heightens immersion. Take the first and the last sequence of the film. By locking the characters within the boundaries of the frame, the film strips away their autonomy and paints them as some kind of a test subject, while assigning the audience as the conductor of an experiment. This pushes the audience to associate themselves with the arcane monolith instead of the more relatable characters, a fittingly twisted concept for a film about the unknown. Of course, because the opening sequence required complex setup with background projections and real animals, the decision to avoid dynamic camera movements in this section could partly be attributed to technical limitations. But whatever the motive, the result is an effective one. Now, what spices up the motionless visuals are jolting edits that happen whenever a person is on screen. The shot will often cut abruptly to an unexpected angle, crossing the axis of action, or to a zoomed version of the same shot while a character is speaking. This may seem trivial at first, but over time it ends up downplaying the importance of individuality by implying the presence of a higher being observing humanity. Additionally, the camera's fixation on non-human elements of the film, like spaceships, buttons, or even HAL, the supercomputer, gradually builds rapport between the audience and the non-living objects, accentuating the correlation between technological advancement and the decline of meaningful human interaction. The last technique, which is my favorite, is an audio-visual one that mixes camera work with objects, settings, and even scores. Kubrick flawlessly links these elements together through 2 geometric figures that command the visual language of 2001: A Space Odyssey: circles and lines, each representing the cyclic and linear aspects of existence. Through the interplay of these shapes, Kubrick delivers the scariest and the most vital quality of this film and the universe: entrapment. In most of the pivotal scenes, objects and settings with spherical identities dominate the screen, with Johann Strauss' Blue Danube, set in 3/4 waltz time known for its cyclic feeling, playing in the background. Residing within this overwhelmingly spherical world are the subtle linear elements, long corridors and paths that create spatial linearity. This juxtaposition highlights the duality of the film universe, that while the external world operates in a spherical manner, the mechanisms within are directed linearly. The film also utilizes linear camera work, such as tail-on and head-on shots and portrait shot reverse shots, to create a directional focus, a sense of linear progression within the film. These techniques guide the audience along a straight path, suggesting a predetermined endpoint. But like the relationship humanity has with the linearly shaped monolith, what envelopes the lines is a cyclic universe, its lack of vertices constantly affirmed by the tilted shots. They control and oversee everything, eventually leading humanity to the next evolutionary step, a cyclic repetition: birth, death, and a new beginning. This is how 2001: A Space Odyssey generates a feeling of entrapment, supervision, and insignificance. It's a colliding factor where we as an individual feel trapped, running inside a hamster wheel, but our struggles and endeavors are given no spotlight. We never learn the history nor the aftermath of the different protagonists, events, and even the monolith. The human characters are but a dot in this infinite universe, their words holding no significance. This is why the camera distracts the audience from the characters, why there are different protagonists, and why the majority of the film is silent. Even when characters do speak, their words are either unintelligible, de-emphasized, or are treated as filler conversations.
What do you think? I'm not sure. What do you think?
In its third act, the film goes as far as to introduce the two protagonists, David and Frank, through a recording and not their real selves. We have no say in the face of the universe. Its potential is infinite and its power immeasurable. Its movement flows like a ghost following a target, while handheld shots are reserved only for the vulnerable human characters. As beautiful and inspiring as it is, 2001: A Space Odyssey is an equally haunting film that captures the immensity of outer space, extending beyond the borders of the screen. This is cinema.
Fine. Thanks very much.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. There are so many details and cool tricks hidden in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and although I didn't get to talk about them all, I had so much fun making this one, so if you're still here, thank you again for watching. Also, like I said, there were plenty of other sci-fi films that I thought were worthy of discussion, so I highly recommend you check them all out, especially Claire Denis' High Life, which is a trip to say the least, and if you're in Canada like I am, you can actually watch High Life for free today thanks to our sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe, from works of iconic directors all the way to emerging auteurs. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected, so it's a great way to watch films you already love and discover new films you haven't seen before. Like I said, you can watch Claire Denis' High Life on Mubi if you're in Canada, and even if you're not, there are tons of wonderful selection of films in Mubi's library. And right now, you can try Mubi free for 30 days by using my link at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. That's mubi.com/SpikimaMovies for a whole month of great cinema for free. So go check it out, and as always, thanks for watching.